3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
I'm Laura Lepley, a Metro Park Ranger. Here at Oxbow Park, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Welcome Center and you're at the Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Oxbow Park.
Call the Metro Council work session to order. I will now ask our clerk, Georgia Langer, to please call the roll for attendance.
Hi, good morning. Councilor Lewis?
Present.
Councilor Gonzalez?
Present.
Councilor Nolan?
Present.
Councilor Rosenthal? Councilor Simpson?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. And Acting Council President Huang.
Present. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with a recognition of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Day. Councilors, our first item on the agenda today is Metro's continued observance of a National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, commonly known as MMIP, observed every May 5th. You'll likely recall our council permanently proclaimed every May 5th as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Day in 2023. Since then, Metro's Tribal Affairs Program and Native Staff Affinity Group have worked hard to bring us education and programming and support Native community-led awareness activities in Greater Portland. MMIP Day of Awareness is intended to bring greater attention, advocacy, and action to the disproportionately high rates of violence and lack of justice experienced by tribal communities across the U.S. The movement seeks to call on and address jurisdictional gaps in government inaction to bring healing and transformation to those who have been impacted and harmed. MMIP does not exist in a vacuum. We're at a time in this country where communities of color are acutely experiencing the intentional theft and loss of loved ones at the hands of the government. We're holding these impacted communities and families in our hearts, and today, our charge to make and hold explicit space for making the invisible visible through this presentation and the coffee hour with tribal and Native partners we had this morning. I'd like to invite our tribal liaison, Katie McDonald, and community partner from the Future Generations Collaborative to present more to help us shine a light on this epidemic happening in tribal communities across the U.S. Good morning.
These mics, okay, great. I didn't know if I had to push a button. Hesquex, Kathimali, Louis Squex, Chaneselkai, Kinselish, U Kasanka, U Kali Space, Gilihu, Susep, U Sherry McDonald, U Marjorie Jones, U Wesley Jones, U Richard Wall, Louine Jewe, Tomas U Tele, Teresa Wall McDonald, Louine Pich Buchot, Chanes Lempi, Yatluasket, Good morning, everybody. My name is Katie McDonald. I shared with you my tribal affiliation and some of who my family is, and that I'm thankful to be here with you this morning. I had hoped to be a little more organized and have some formal comments to share with you all. But I think that Kola and Abraham shared a lot of really good words with all of us this morning already. And I would really struggle to come up with something more than what they already shared. I also am not a professional women's football player, and I am not a professional fighter. So I don't think there's anything that I could do that could top anything that was shared this morning. But I do want to connect today's observance and what we're talking about to Metro's work, because I think for some community members and some of our staff and maybe even our leadership, the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis might seem far away from the work that we do, because we're not a regional government and a public agency that provides law enforcement services or supports. We're not an agency that directly provides public health or social services. We're not an agency that directly provides those government services that a lot of families, tribal communities, and survivors are looking for when they've been harmed and are trying to seek healing and transformation. We do, however, do a lot of work that acts as both a preventative factor and also a really important, I don't want to say treatment, because I don't like the use of that word in this context, but we do fund a lot of work that's really important for community to be able to have access to after they've experienced harm, so that they can try to reground themselves and find healing and transformation with their communities. And that work is the conservation work that we do in our Parks and Nature Department. It's the dedicated resources and staff that you continue to support and uplift through the policymaking decisions, the funding decisions that you make, so that when Native community wants to get out on the land because they want to dig camas or they want to harvest hazel or they want to dig cedar root, they have a place they can go to do that, and they have trusted partners and staff who they know who can take them out to the land for that connection and healing opportunity. It's also the work that we fund through our affordable housing bond and our supportive housing services work, where we program that funding out to jurisdictional partners, community-specific partners, and service providers to connect with the Native community when they may have experienced a crisis. They're looking for a shelter, they're looking for a safe space. They need somewhere to land, and they need good people that they trust at that place to help them get regrounded, reconnected, and start healing. So this work does connect to us. You know, it's not if it connects to us, it's how much time are we going to take to find all the ways it connects to our work. Really want to thank all the partners who are here in the room. We have folks from Future Generations Collaborative who are out supporting and working with community every day. Kola and Abraham. Abraham is the cultural ambassador on the Umatilla Tribes Youth Council. So I just want to shout him out for being a young elected representative here in this space with our Metro councilors. Representative Tana Sanchez is here. We have staff from the governor's office, including the governor's office tribal affairs director, folks from Prismid, the county, lots of spaces. I really appreciate that you guys give us the flexibility and the opportunity to bring people into our building to build community and have these important conversations. So I'm gonna stop there and turn things over to the more important presentation this morning with one of our partners from Future Generations Collaborative, who's gonna help really deepen the conversation and share what's important with you all this morning. And I appreciate you all being here to bear witness and really hear everything that she has to say. And Keisha, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yat ea bene, shik e dosha dena she e kisha de shik eganisha. Kin luchin initially, tohe dlini bashichin, nakai dena e dashite, natlane dashanale, akwit ego dena adzan nishle. Shema Marlene Bigay Wilya, Shija Mario Dishoke Wilya. What I have said is Good morning, friends, relatives, allies, and council members. My name is Keisha Dishoke. I am born to the Red House clan and born for Water Flows Together clan. My paternal grandfather is Minikuji Lakota, and my maternal grandfather is Mexican. I come before you today not only as a community member, but as a Diné woman. I also hold a role as a community health worker and someone deeply connected to this work through both lived experience and community care. I want to first start, I want you to imagine walking through the world carrying the weight of injustice that surrounds your community every single day. Imagine hearing terms like missing and murdered Indigenous women, relatives, and people, MMIW, GTSP, MMIR, MMIP, MMIW 2S+, and realizing that to many people, these acronyms are letters on a page or a hashtag on a social media post. Then coming to the realization that to many people, these acronyms still do not hold the urgency, the empathy, or action that they should, knowing that externally, the general public will never fully understand the emotional hold each of these acronyms holds. Now imagine living in a place like Oregon, land that has long been home to the Confederated Tribes of Grand Rod, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, and many other Indigenous nations. And recognizing that the first people of this land are still the last to receive urgency when it matters most. Imagine living in a world where Indigenous people go missing and are not treated as urgent cases. Where our loved ones are overlooked in media coverage, delayed in investigations, and misclassified in data systems simply because of who we are and how we are perceived by law enforcement. The reality behind this is not abstract. Nationally, 84.3% of Indigenous populations experience violence in their lifetime. 56.1% experience sexual violence. 55.5% experience physical violence by an intimate partner. And 48.8% experience stalking in their lifetime. And to you, these are just numbers, but they're not. They represent our relatives, our families, and our communities. Too often, when Indigenous people disappear, assumptions are made immediately. Law enforcement may assume it was substance-related, that someone ran away, or it was self-inflicted. Meanwhile, in cases involving non-Native victims, there's immediate attention, widespread searches, and public empathy. Those victims are humanized. Their safety becomes a priority. Our people deserve that same urgency, that same visibility, that same care. This issue is deeply tied to jurisdictional barriers. What we often refer to as tribal sovereignty and the overlap between tribal, county, state, and federal systems. Predators take advantage of these gaps. Many come into Indigenous communities because they see Native people as vulnerable and unprotected. Harm is inflicted and accountability becomes difficult because cases move through fragmented systems with no immediate or unified response. This is an all too familiar narrative that plagues our communities. And while this issue is systemic, it is also deeply personal. As an Indigenous woman, I know that Native women are disproportionately impacted by violence. I know what it feels like to survive sexual assault at a young age and see no accountability for that person who caused that harm. I am a part of that 56.1% of women that have fallen victim to this epidemic. Sorry. I also carry the loss of my father, Mario Mato Chaos Dishake, who was murdered in 2011. His life as a beloved father, a husband, a son, and a relative. I'm so sorry, I'm so blind. And relative, let me start this line again, I'm so sorry. His life as a beloved father, husband, son, and relative was violently taken away, and the person responsible received only a minimum of a 2-year sentence. 2 years for a life, 2 years for a family forever changed. This is what injustice looks like. This is what it feels like when our lives are not valued equally, even in death. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Okay. Both of these experiences have deeply shaped me. It's pushed me to dedicate myself to advocating for our sisters, our brothers, our grandmothers, our children, and our two-spirit relatives, because nobody deserves to experience violence without justice or support afterward. This day matters because our people are not statistics. They are human beings, they are loved, and they are family. Too many Indigenous people are found in fields, ditches, roadsides, and abandoned places after nobody acted quickly enough to protect them. Too many people are left grieving while fighting systems that never prioritized their loved ones in the first place. This is why awareness alone is not enough. Okay. As part of this work, I serve with the Future Generations Collaborative, where we are building a community-driven response through the Bike Project. This initiative focuses on creating an Indigenous-led database and a dashboard to improve how missing person cases are tracked and responded to across systems here in Oregon. By addressing gaps in data, coordination, and communication, we are working to ensure faster, more accurate responses when someone goes missing. We are also investing in our communities through trainings in digital safety, data literacy, and trafficking awareness, so families have the tools to protect and advocate for their loved ones. This is what it looks like to move from awareness into action. So I ask you today to move beyond seeing this as just another awareness event or another date on your calendar that you have to attend. This is about real people experiencing trauma, grief, loss, and fear every day. It is about families waiting for answers. It's about families never seeing their loved ones again. A major part of this crisis is not only rooted in ignorance, but in stereotypes, as well as a lack of understanding about Indigenous peoples. Indigenous people come from many different nations, backgrounds, and appearances, yet our identities are constantly misclassified or erased in data collection systems that inevitably impact searches, investigations, and outcomes. So today, as a community member, I ask each of you to do more than listen. I ask each and every person in this room to continue learning, continue advocating, continue speaking up when Indigenous voices are ignored. Because protecting our people, it begins with visibility, it begins with empathy, and it begins with compassion, and it begins with refusing to look away. Ayaha, thank you so much for holding this space for me this morning. That's all.
You. Thank you. Oh. Isha, I'd like to just share on behalf of the full council that we appreciate your words and call to action today, and that we should reflect, digest, and find pathways to act. Our first responsibility today is to be here and to bear witness to the hard truths and stories that have been told. And also thank you to Cole and Abraham for speaking this morning and sharing your stories as well. It is our responsibility to uphold and support the resiliency of tribal and Native communities with the resources and tools that we have available at our agency. And I'd like to call for a brief recess so that we can share our gratitude with Yukisha and the whole community here before returning to our council business. So we'll call a 15-minute recess. Oh,
Excuse me, Acting Councilor President Wong. First, Keisha, thank you for sharing. I'm sure that that was very challenging and there were a lot of hard truths in there. And I'm glad that you feel willing to come and bring that into the space so that our decision makers can hear about what the firsthand experiences are of our communities. And sorry, Councilor President Wong, we had a late breaking resource that was shared with us from the governor's office. That's they've created a short video also to support awareness of MMIP. And I'm hoping we might be able to play that before officially calling the recess, if that's okay.
yeah, please.
Sorry, I didn't get that into the script.
No problem. That's your.
Hello, Oregon. Governor Kotek here. May 5th is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Awareness Day. It's a time to call out something that should never be ignored. Across the United States, Indigenous people, especially women and girls, experience some of the highest rates of violence in the country. And too often, when someone goes missing or is killed, those cases are not reported, not prioritized, or not fully investigated. That means families are left without answers. Communities are left without justice. Here in Oregon, we are working to do better. This includes strengthening coordination between law enforcement and tribal governments, improving how cases are tracked, and making sure families have the support they need during what is a devastating time. But this work is not just about systems. It's about people. It's about recognizing the history and the harm that Indigenous communities have faced. And it's about committing to doing things differently moving forward. I want to thank tribal leaders, advocates, and families who continue to push for accountability and change. Your voices matter, and they are being heard. Today, I encourage all Oregonians to take a moment to learn more, to listen, and to stand with Indigenous communities across our state. Thanks for listening.
And that now concludes our presentation. Thanks.
Well, thank you all so much. Got a lot to think about and digest and think about how we can continue to stand in solidarity with you all and work with you all. So thank you so much. We'll take a 15-minute recess and yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. Whoa, take it. Nap time. All the over 40 crowd is like, yes, snap.
I had some coffee. Okay, well, we convene and jump into presentations. Our only presentation today is Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. We'll talk about the agenda overview and committee requests. So the Supportive Housing Services team is with us today to provide an overview of the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee agendas for the rest of the calendar year. In addition to reviewing plans to implement council-directed policy outcomes, we have time to discuss efficient information sharing and meeting structures. To present this update, we have Liam Frost, Housing Director, and Yesenia Delgado, Supportive Housing Services Division Director. Welcome back.
Thank you, Acting President, Councilors, pleasure to be here. My name is Liam Frost. You see him, his pronouns. I'm the Housing Director for Metro. And while we come before you a lot at work sessions and in meetings, I just want to call out something explicitly that we are doing something new here with you today. We are trying to find a rhythm to brief you on upcoming RPOC meetings, to brief you on agenda items, and then we'll come back and debrief and so on. So as we move forward, you might get sick of seeing us, but believe me when I say this, we're going to try and iron out the creases as we go. But today, for example, is a briefing for you all to understand how we are proposing to move with RPOC, how we're going to prioritize agenda items, and more importantly, to raise up how we are planning to implement the work plan that you all approved in December, and then some of the additional reforms you approved in a resolution in March. I also want to say that as we're figuring this all out, we are going to continue to find more effective ways to work with RPOC Chair Gonzalez and seek his input and be more efficient around working with Chair Gonzalez and the other two Metro councillors who are on RPOC. So just wanted to take the opportunity to call that out. This is what we're doing today, providing you with more information and soliciting feedback at the end. Next slide, please. Here are the three things we are going to be briefing you on today. The progress on the SHS reforms to date, a sneak preview of next week's RPOC meeting agenda, and then the main bulk of the meeting, Yesenia is going to be providing a look ahead for the rest of the calendar year on RPOC agenda items. And again, it's all in service to operationalize the reforms that you approved back in December. Next slide, please. All right. So I'm a bit of a stickler when it comes to PowerPoint slides. I only like to see 3 bullet points usually, but we're trying something different with you all today. You have this in front of you in printouts. I think Alice Hodge, our council liaison, printed out various versions of this so you can keep them. You can refer to them throughout the presentation because this is rather text heavy, but what's on this slide are the 5 main reforms that you approved back in December. You will see that the first row we have completed. It is the launch of the SHS Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. I don't want to understate how much of a lift that was in sunsetting the Tri-County Planning Body, sunsetting the Oversight Committee, recruiting and setting up this new RPOC for success. So we're pretty proud, but also we're moving on and making sure that the RPOC moves effectively. From 2 to 4 there, we have the Regional Investment Fund improvements, the KPIs, KEIs, and 5-year goals, the data dashboard, and administrative rules. 2 of those, the RIF and the data dashboard, were also included in March's resolution, and their reforms to dig down even further. We got some clear direction around the RIF and more specific direction around the data dashboard. I just want to point out the data dashboard for a second there. Because you get to hear from me and Yesenia a lot, but you don't get to hear from a lot of our staff a lot of the time. We have experts inside of our housing department who are working hard every day to make this a reality. You'll see in that 3rd row over, we've identified Power BI as the software. I'm just going to get nerdy a second here, or I'm going to pretend to get nerdy. But Power BI is apparently the engine that's going to allow this dashboard to be a more interactive interface. And if I may quote, I received a Teams message this morning from Chris on our data team. The quote unquote database side lets me load up the HMIS data that we get in Excel spreadsheets, do some data cleaning like make groups for exit destinations, replace HUD jargon with more helpful labels. On the Canvas side, it gives me the blank slate I build this masterpiece on. Yes, that's what he said. It allows me to make the separate views, put in filters I want people to be able to use, drop in tables and charts which are interactive, and lets me customize what people can click onto and drill down. That's exactly what we want our public to be able to do to ensure that they are holding us accountable. And it's also what we want to do for our interested parties and leaders of different communities to see how people are being taken care of throughout the region. So I just wanted to share that with you because you usually hear high-level updates. Should you want individual data briefings, all you have to do is ask. Next slide, please. These are the reforms that were included in the March resolution and approved by Council. They are the continuous improvement framework and the improved accountability and corrective action plan framework. And then lastly, the unified regional funding framework. Just to provide you with a little bit more background, a reminder of what those are. Continuous improvement is a school of thought around organizational development. We are working hard on figuring out how to bring that culture into the housing department as well as into the work that we're doing with the counties. And that's going to be coming to our park in July for discussion. We know that the Portland Metro Chamber representative, Andrew Rowe, is particularly interested in this because he's an expert in this. And so we look forward to working with Andrew.
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by initial scoping?
That's where we're at in the process right now. And so we are scoping what we actually need to do to implement continuous improvement in the work. And this has given me the opportunity to Councilor Wong. We are prioritizing what we believe needs to be prioritized in this moment, especially with the deadlines that Council has given us. This is going to be ongoing work. And so we're in the initial scoping phase because this was passed, what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Yep. So that's where we're at. Same with the corrective action plan framework too. Do you want to add anything to that, Yesenia?
Well, I guess my question was just, is it like you're going to create some proposals for discussion?
Mhm.
Is that the scoping piece or?
Yeah, that's right. So I think when we say scoping, what we're currently in the middle of is doing some research, some analysis to see like kind of what's out there and how some of these see the continuous improvement framework, like these models that exist in other fields and sectors, how they can apply to the human services sector. So that's what we're currently in the middle of. Then we will be drafting frameworks or proposals that will consist of discussion prompts for you all to further review, in addition to like an overview of all the material that we presented to you all.
Okay.
So we'll be taking that to both the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee and then you all for your further review as we work to finalize them.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yesenia. Next, the corrective action plan framework that I think came directly from you, Acting President Wong, that you wanted to see finer contours around the process around applying a corrective action plan. I believe we've already drafted a version internally at the Housing Department right now. And then that last one is kind of the big kahuna, that is holding recipients of SHS funding accountable and performance management through using funding allocations. And so that is expected to begin work at the beginning of next year. Next slide, please. Okay, that concludes the update on the reforms status. You're going to see those tables again. That's the template we are going to use every time we come back to council to provide those updates. Again, I believe that you have them in printouts in front of you. You're going to get used to it. That's what we want you to do. Next, we have the agenda for next week's RPOC. This is more about transparency and sharing with council what RPOC is planning to discuss. Not sure that we want to spend too much time on this slide today. We will spend more time with you the day after RPOC on May 14th, providing an update about how that meeting went. Okay. I'm going to hand it over to Yesenia in a second. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yesenia's going to walk you through the RPOC agenda proposals or the draft agenda proposals for the next 7 months going through the end of the calendar year. We also have Alice Hodge in the chambers today, who is our council liaison. And if we have any questions around process, we can bring Alice up to answer those questions too. Over to you, Yesenia.
Thank you, Liam, and good morning, councilors. My name is Yesenia Delgado. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the SHS Division Director. If we go to the next slide, As Liam shared, I'll be walking y'all through a more in-depth look of the draft 7-month agenda overview for our POC meetings, basically from now in May through December. This agenda overview is staff's best recommendation for how we program and operationalize the committee's charge that you all have tasked for RPOC, which is really to be a regional governance committee that provides oversight, accountability, and policy recommendations to Metro Council. And before I get into the details of the different agendas and the duties and how we're going to program it all, I just wanted to share with you all some almost guiding principles that you see on this slide for how we as staff work on this agenda overview. So the first thing that we did really was look at the official committee responsibilities as adopted by you all in the December ordinance that consolidated the duties of both the Tri-County Planning Body and the SHS Oversight Committee. So this included things like reviewing program expenditures for SHS, reviewing annual reports, and then having the committee draft a regional report. So we really looked at those core responsibilities first and made sure that there was ample time for them in the meeting agenda overviews. After that, we then really looked at the priorities that you all had passed via resolution or the 2020 SHS reform work plan. So that really included things like reviewing POP A and B spending, developing a homeless legislative agenda. So those were the next things that we programmed into the agendas. And I'll be honest that after we did that, there was not a whole lot of time left to program. If I can just remind you all that, we had an oversight committee and a tri-county planning body that collectively met 4.5 hours a month. And now we have the regional policy and oversight committee that's meeting 3 hours a month with additional priorities and responsibilities. So it has been a little bit of a Tetris situation to ensure that we are having enough time for all the priorities and responsibilities of this committee, while also leaving ample time for discussion to ensure that all 20-something perspectives at the table are heard and able to provide their meaningful feedback in terms of where we're moving forward with this. So then as we continue to plan and prioritize for the key priorities that you all have set forth, it's also critical for us that we are nimble and flexible and adaptable to the emerging regional homeless services needs in our community. So we're also making a priority and thinking through how we could ensure that we have time for things like that. And I'll just note that, in consultation with Chair Gonzalez and making sure that we are connecting and getting the right direction to ensure that we're moving forward on your priorities on this committee has also been really helpful. So thank you. And also Metro councilors who are sitting on this policy and oversight committee. Now, if we go to the next slide. This I know probably looks extremely busy for a slide, but this is really just a rolled up version of the documents that you all have in front of you. So it's really looking, if you look here on the left side, the core duties, it's really highlighting those core duties and responsibilities that you all passed via your ordinance in December 2025, consolidating again the duties of both the oversight and tri-county planning body. To ensure that as we look from now through December, that we are leaving ample time for the policy and oversight committee to conduct oversight for the fund. As you'll see here, they are busy right away establishing and submitting KPIs and KEIs and goals for council consideration. And then as you look later on in the year, that's when things actually get really, really busy for this committee on the oversight side of things, because they start to review county annual work plans to ensure that, the counties are spending funds for the previous year in alignment with SHS requirements and Metro Council's priorities. They then do all of that, review in alignment to local implementation plans, draft the regional report for you all. That really takes a lot of their time. Councilor Lewis, you might recall oversight committee members calling that season a part-time job in some ways because of all the additional meetings and materials that they review. So that's what really, again, this doesn't have all the core duties and responsibilities, but it provides at a high level the key charge around oversight that this committee needs to be conducting. Now, if we go to the next slide. This really, again, once we moved past the core duties and responsibilities, what you see here is an overview of the council adopted priorities via resolutions and the Metro 2020, not the 2020 work plan, the Metro SHS reforms work plan. So as you'll see here, and Liam already talked about this a little bit, these additional reform areas that we're looking at developing. So developing the regional continuous improvement framework and the CAP framework. So here you'll see when these agenda items will be going to the Policy and Oversight Committee. Of course, it doesn't speak to like all the work that staff are doing on the side to ensure that we're doing research, technical analysis to bring forth the best policy proposals for this committee to consider ahead of bringing those to you all. You also see here the RIF governance models that we're exploring. And for that one in particular, there is a little bit of onboarding that's necessary around the Tri-County Planning Body regional goals while building towards the new investment framework. So that one's happening a little bit of both at the same time, which is what you see reflected here on this slide. Now, if we go to the next slide. This is continuing to call in your council adopted priorities. And as you'll see here, you had a huge focus on ensuring that the work from the Oversight Committee and the Tri-County Planning Body didn't get missed. Well, I will know is what this slide here doesn't account for is the onboarding sessions that we did have with this committee, where we really spent an entire session really focusing on the work that had happened and the recommendations of both the Tri-County Planning Body and the regional plan. So just know that that work has happened on the onboarding. We invited committee members to come and speak to policy, to our POC members, and that's work that will continue to work in advance. But I just wanted to note that if you see the Oversight Committee recommendations not as clearly articulated here, it's because some of that work has already happened. And then another key priority that you all called us into was reviewing spending for populations A and B. And you'll see that we've integrated that to be a key component of the reviewing of the annual reports and the development of the regional report for the committee. Next slide. Yeah, and then this is, I think, the last slide that we had around additional priorities that you all had, which were to initiate provider contract improvements. We'll be walking you all through an update at the July meeting, and I think you all will also get an update at the in later May when we come to present to you all on Q3 reports, and you'll kind of see where we're at with some of that work. The Consider Annual Independent Audit, as folks might recall, this came out of the President's Work Group last year, and we agreed that as part of operationalizing this priority, we would be looking at the SHS systems analysis, evaluation, and findings. So we've consulted with a contractor that is supporting us doing some resource and systems mapping for SHS that we'll be presenting to you all and also the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee, those findings, so you all could take that into consideration as you're making system level decisions for this fund. And then finally, we have the Develop the Regional Homeless Services Legislative Agenda. We are currently programming that right now for September. This will be something that, of course, we'll continue to chat with you all to make sure that that feels like the right timeline as we're bringing things to this committee, that feels like the most supportive structure. I will note, as you'll see here, a lot of these conversations, there's really just room for like that agenda item that one time and really minimal time for discussion. So that's one of the things we want to further unpack with you all today. How do we strike the right balance? How does staff bring stuff that is prepped and have folks weigh in, knowing that perhaps there might be like a whole lot of follow-up time for that. Next slide. And this slide here just really reflects at a high level the agenda items that I just named that we're prioritizing for the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee with us at the top. So those are the different agenda items that you'll see us focused on. But then what you see at the bottom of this arrow is how we are planning with council to bring those same updates to the entire council and ensuring that there's connective tissue between the both, that folks are getting the updates. So for example, for things like updated goals and KEIs and KPIs, that's something that ultimately Metro Council will approve. So even though the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee is weighing in, providing feedback, it's critical that you all are also hearing that feedback and those conversations as we work towards that final adoption in later summer. So those are the kind of things. The Regional Investment Fund will also be another item that is critical that both bodies and councils are getting those updates. So as action is required from both, that folks are feeling like they have the same grounding and information. And of course, this is just our initial draft. It's subject to change. That's what we wanted to bring to you all today and hear a little bit more about your thoughts and how you want us to either continue to prioritize some of these things or perhaps change and, move in some other directions. Next slide. Yeah, so I know we did a lot of sharing, around like our best thinking, our recommendations for how we operationalize all the committee responsibilities, the priorities, but we really want to hear from you all today, how this information is landing. We want to further lean into some of these discussion questions, but of course, Liam and I are both here to answer any other questions that you might have. But we do want to talk about the committee's meeting format and cadence and how we can maximize the impact given the current structure that we have. We also want to talk about potentially delegating some of these functions into subcommittees to like really free up some time at the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. So that's another potential option that we have. But most importantly, we just want to make sure that we hear from you all around if this agenda outline aligns with the SHS reforms and the council priorities that you all have set for us. So I'll pause there and we're here to answer any questions, or we can move into discussion if you all are ready to.
And we're going to move to the next slide so we can focus on each question too.
Okay, great. Well, let's jump into discussion. The first question is, how can the committee's meeting format or cadence be adjusted to maximize impact?
And if there are no immediate thoughts, it would be helpful for us to hear from you. What should we keep our eye on as we move forward to?
Yeah, let's start with Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you've distilled what is a lot into, I think it's only like 5 pieces of paper.
That's Alice. Thank you.
So yes, thank you. I think in terms of like where the strongest and most significant threat is, it is in the KPIs. And I think that's responsive to what you've heard from us as an urgent need, both because it's a fundamental practice that has been missing, but it's also the strategy we're going to use immediately, both to regain trust, but also to make sure that any next dollar goes to something that works. So I just want to lift up that that's really good work. The place where I'm seeing a question about the meeting format being appropriate for the subject matter is actually in the county plans. And the county plans, I think, will be introduced at our next meeting. And they're going to be given about 10 minutes apiece. Whereas in the previous format, we would have about 45 minutes to an hour per county. So I'm just flagging that I don't think 10 minutes is going to do enough justice to even orient everybody to the plan for the next year. And then if that plan is truly the blueprint for how the money is going to be spent, and then the KPIs get mapped against that, it gives us, it's a disservice. It doesn't give us the foundation we need to potentially make changes come November or December when the annual reports come back. So I know I can't, what's that time spinner thing from Harry Potter? I can't do that thing, but how else are we going to get the committee to spend enough time to get the depth of these county plans?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And one of the balancing tricks that staff is trying to manage, because there are these core oversight responsibilities that the committee is charged with, but there's just very limited time given the goals and KPIs work that you just described. I think I'll just share a little bit more about our thinking around how we balance that, at least for this meeting, is that these county annual work plans are just drafts at this point. So we're sharing those out with the committee, hoping that folks can review those in the meeting packet. And then you're right, there's not as much time as in the past for counties to actually present and then walk through a Q&A. But we are leaving more time at the September meeting, which is really when these work plans are then finalized and moved through. I think what's tricky about this year as we're working through reforms, the counties are currently in their budgeting and planning process for next year. So it's a little hard to be able to gauge, when exactly these KPIs will be able to work through them. So I know we've been talking to them and ensuring that they know kind of where we're headed with some of these updated goals and KEIs to see where they can start planning. But without them being finalized, it's just a little hard to like be able to like hold them to it and be like, you need to like bring those into this work planning process.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, I'm looking at the September, yes, final county work plans. That's where the work plans come back up again.
Mm-hmm.
But like by the end of September, we're a quarter in, right? So I'm the last person on the planet who should suggest more meetings. But it just feels to me like the county work plans we need to be doing probably in July with more depth. And I understand that the entire 2.5 hours of usable agenda item will be on KPIs.
Mm-hmm.
This might be an adequate body of work for some subgroups, some
Yeah.
work groups. Otherwise, I think we're gonna be a whole year behind.
Mm-hmm.
One of the balancing acts that Yesenia mentioned is that there are so many bodies of work already underway, and what we're trying to do is respect the pieces that we are absolutely responsible for, that the Oversight Committee was and the TCPB was, and adjusting the whole vehicle at the same time to provide opportunities to weigh in. And so in many ways, this next fiscal year is a transitional period. And so on my mind, what are the opportunities to rewrite during that transitional year, and then really doubling down on FY28 beginning in the fall and seeing that as the major opportunity. And so it is a balancing act. And then with regard to the amount of time that our park needs, one of the solutions that we're considering is extending the meeting, providing that as an option. Since we have a number of elected officials, it's difficult to get those calendars aligned for an extra meeting. So maybe extending that meeting by an hour or two perhaps might be the way to do it. But that's just a sneak preview to what we'll propose with Chair Gonzalez at some point.
Thank you. If that all feels right, I think the urgency I have about this year's plan versus the 28-year plan is our first real run of it, is the amount of cuts that are coming, not because of our funding, but because of every other funding source. And needing to fully understand the comprehensive picture is something we've been asking for 4 years. And the work plan is really the only place we might get a window into that.
I agree with you. And I think that now we're talking about it, I think we are going to have to figure out a way for the counties to present their budgets after they approve them. I know there is a lot of debate, rigorous debate, shall we say, especially in Multnomah County, as opposed to Washington County. But Multnomah County is deep in that work right now. And I think they're not aligned yet as a board. And so once they start approving those investments, our park's going to need to see that. So that's something we can think about. But I agree with you in that for the first time, we're seeing major cuts in Multnomah County.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just add a bit more context, that there is an IGA deadline that we're working within when it comes to budgets, where the IGAs clearly state that, counties don't have to provide us their budget for this next year till 60 days after the budget is approved. So Councilor Lewis, you remember those conversations in the Oversight Committee, folks wanting to know about budgets before or get those budgets, but that's why they don't come until September, which, as you noted, is a whole quarter into the year. And it's really about those IGA deadlines that we have set in place. That's not to say we couldn't invite them to do some conversations around their thinking and their planning, but in terms of that final budget that they present to us, that doesn't come until 60 days after the budget approves at each county.
Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Wong. Great line of conversation and question there. I think in terms of the meeting cadence and our agenda, I think one of the tensions that I'm trying to hold is what the committee has expressed to us is they want to see real, tangible changes, right? We want to feel like this is a committee that is actively working on improving the system. And I think folks have participated in multiple public committees, maybe some metro, maybe some non-metro, where it feels like the work just kind of takes on the committees take on a life of their own, and you kind of don't feel like you're truly influencing. So I think this work distills what I think is attempting to strike a really strong balance, and it's fantastic to see. One of the areas that I think I would like to see a little bit more of, or maybe help get a better understanding, is we're trying to improve a measure that is working within a system. And I think what some of the RPOC members have asked me to is, how do we diagnose the system also, and what changes we need the system to make, with our funding being a part of that system. And I'll just keep coming back to the need to tie the substance abuse, addiction, psychiatric behavioral supports, where I think there is actually just such a big gap in terms of how our state is solving for that problem. And I think that's what we're being judged on by the voters. I'm not seeing how this kind of bigger question about alignment is popping up in this work, but perhaps you can help me see it. Maybe it is in terms of KEIs or reforms and goals and things like that.
That's a great question, and you're proselytizing to the convert already. The KEIs, let me be specific about the KPIs and the goals. That is for our system, is what we are holding our dollars accountable to. Where you will see that work is in our legislative agenda, Councilor Gonzalez. And I've been pretty vocal with my counterparts at the counties, some city folks too, that I'll be clear with you, what we really need to do is have an aligned regional voice around the desperate need for behavioral health resources from the state. It is not SHS's job to backfill the state. But what RPOC can do with the firepower it has is to be aligned in that advocacy. Similarly, some of those folks around the table have responsibility and authority in their own areas in which they can apply that authority in a county behavioral health division, for example. And so while I think we as Metro do not have direct oversight over that, we have significant influence, especially at RPOC. And it's kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to bring those people around the table together, is to have that holistic view of who we're trying to serve and how we're trying to serve our community. And as I've said before, SHS is necessary but not sufficient to solve our homelessness and housing instability crisis. So how do we leverage RPOC and its members that, one, have the conversation, two, get aligned, and then three, make the changes that we need to make? And I think the major thing that we can do that's on the agenda in front of you is that legislative agenda for the state's long session.
And I think
Thanks.
maybe if I could add
Yeah.
something on a finer point to that, is like, it's that, and I do think that there's other agenda items that get to what you're describing of the broader system and what we can do. I think one of those is considering the annual independent audit that we are scheduled for August right now and this will really be looking at a systems map of all the resources, or at least the best idea that we have, because it's kind of hard to be able to do that without everyone coming to the table and sharing all the information with us. So there are.
Is that the first time we do like a systems map in
Yeah.
SHS history? Okay.
Yeah, and I'll let you know, I've seen sneak peeks of it. It's not going to be the 100% this is it thing, because again, we need county buy-in, service provider buy-in. So we're getting all this information because it's not publicly information. So we have agenda items like that. We also have the continuous quality improvement framework, right? That looks at how can we improve the system and what are the system gaps for SHS and others. But as Liam was saying, like, that's not, because we have so many oversight items and other items that this committee is responsible for, that's not, you don't see that thread maybe along so many meetings, but we do have like a prompt of like wanting to further hear from you around like, is that something you'd want us to further prioritize? We can. And then perhaps what are some other things on here that, like Councilor Lewis mentioned, maybe like a subcommittee for something around oversight or something else. So we're happy to like accommodate and shift things, just knowing that there's going to be needing to be things that then that get be prioritized.
Yeah, I appreciate. All right, great. I think if I am correct in just reviewing our future agendas, I think we only have one time to talk about the legislative agenda, and that's in September. And what I think gives me pause about that is that, as we saw in our first meeting, this is a very opinionated group. I think very experienced group from their sector, from the way that they're trying to approach the solution to the crisis. I think that if we want the region to speak with one voice, I think we need to kind of nurture and care how we develop that one voice. So again, I think happy to see us there. I'm happy that the staff are doing that work. And I also think there's a big gap in our elected officials and the kind of the principals that are at that RPOC table also saying the same thing that staff are saying, because I think a lot of our disagreements that have come from that. So that's kind of one thing I'll share. I know that our agendas are really pressed for time, so it's like where are we going to squeeze that time? Another thing that I was having a great conversation with someone about was, and hopefully this is what our KPIs and KEIs help us do, but if we start to look at parts of the system that are not performing well, so let's say that, you know, there's certain bottlenecks, or we have like we give ourselves an F or a red color in a certain part of the process, that those things become really actionable and very like, well, then let's fix that. Like, there's a 90-day delay between case manager to to some kind of provider. And it's like, well, why is it 90?
Yeah.
How can we shorten that, right? So I think that's what we're trying to do with the KEI, and kind of give real life examples to people to be like, well, right now the wait is 100 days. I'm making these numbers up. Please, public, do not hold me to these times that I'm saying. But I think if we can say we're going to cut it to 40 or 30 or 20, that to me feels like a very human thing that we can go and talk to folks about. So that's one thing. And then just one last thing is, I've heard a lot of feedback about how we kind of classify our populations, the Pop A and Pop B, and how we should actually probably have more than 2 populations, just because there's so many different kind of folks that we serve. And so I'm kind of curious to see how our work helps us define the problem, define the system, and hopefully help us define the solution. So there were some questions and some general thoughts to share. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thoughts for me, you know, I think RPOC and what we do is a huge priority for both the region and the council. And I think you'll be coming during COO communications pretty regularly. But I'm just wondering, colleagues, if you have any ideas on how you would best like to be updated on progress and weigh in. I don't know if there's things that we can do in the background, or if staff can do more briefings, but is there anything that, you know, you might want to see? So maybe, yeah, but Councilor Simpson, Rosenthal, or Nolan, if you have any ideas or requests, just so that, you know, we're all on the same page as much as possible. Okay, great. You're doing all the things you gotta do. And then I think for this question, I feel like this question is also some kind of cart before the horse some ways, especially if your second question around subcommittees. Because I think if we do have subcommittees, you know, that would impact all the agenda items potentially, right? Because the subcommittees might do their work and then have to report back to the whole RPOC. So maybe I think we can move on to that next question. But I guess, yeah, like who decides that there are subcommittees? Because I think now that you have everything here, you have a very ambitious schedule of work. And I don't think you'll be able to have enough time to have all those debates in RPOC meetings. So I actually do think subcommittees are warranted. And if they are warranted, then how do you report back up to RPOC and then to council? But I think that like funding framework conversation is like, it's not a 40-minute conversation every month. It's like, I think it's going to be iterative.
I think, you know, a lot of this is work in progress, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's a very ambitious agenda. It is. And if we can go to the next slide so we can ground the next part of our conversation. The way in which we've currently envisioned potential subcommittees is in service of these agenda items, because as you said, these agenda items are pressed. People are very busy. And so doing that work through a subcommittee could really help us and provide a lot of credibility to that work. I mean, we will accommodate the capacity within the housing department as needed, and we will indicate and communicate to you where there might be trade-offs and where we might have to deprioritize. But as to the question as to who, I'm going to ask our head attorney here, Karen McLaren, to weigh in.
Thank you, Acting Council President Wong and Councilors Carrie McLaren, Metro Attorney. The Metro Code and the bylaws for the Supportive Housing Services Committee allow for temporary or limited duration subcommittees to be created. And that they are allowed, in my interpretation, to be created by the committee. So I think the committee would need to determine a subcommittee, as I interpret the code, is limited to, constituent representatives who sit on the committee. So we wouldn't be adding any additional members to those subcommittees. The temporary duration is in code is tied to the fiscal year. And I think really what that reflects is some of what Liam was speaking to in terms of those subcommittees do create staff work, which does have some budget considerations and some prioritizations. So as currently provided in code, those subcommittees are allowed to last until the end of the fiscal year. And I think that just really allows a department to be able to reflect whether they can appropriately resource those subcommittees. If that existing structure doesn't work, of course, there's always the flexibility for council to reconsider how it wants to have subcommittees for a particular advisory committee of council. But at present, those are the parameters.
Thank you. I think that will be a discussion that we'll have in our check-ins with the three councilors sitting on our park and develop those proposals for specific agenda items. But right now, what we're asking council to provide us feedback on is, as you mentioned, a little bit cart before the horse. We want to get it into your minds right now so that we can adjust as needed as we go. And so it's a little difficult to, see into the future as to what kind of subcommittees we might need. But it's already this morning has come up from Councilor Lewis. So we want to be as prepared as possible if we need to flex and be responsive.
Okay, and it's going to be mainly the chair that asks for subcommittees, or do we expect the committee itself to be like, we want to create subcommittees?
I think that's a conversation with the three of you and how you want to structure that, and specifically chair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
you want me to share thoughts?
Sure.
Yeah, I think when I think about a subcommittee being put together, first thing that comes to mind is like, how are we going to staff it? Capacity, limited resources. Is the scope of the subcommittee really well defined? Is the tenure of the committee well defined? And what is it? What is the actionable thing that we want? I feel a general sense of flexibility to want to, if we want RPOC to be the region staple where we have the most pressing and important conversations on homelessness, we should be open to committee requests. But it's going to be a bit of a song and a dance to make sure with folks, what is it that you actually want to do? And in order for us to dedicate the resources to it. And also I'm open to hearing from everyone else, but that's just kind of my gut reaction.
I mean, just for me, I think the funding framework conversation is ripe for subcommittee, because that's a deep one.
Funding framework for, you mean like a renewal or?
Yeah, for the May 28 deadline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, and that also crosses fiscal years, but it is going to be a hard combo.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can just add, we are, what staff put together today is just all of the responsibilities of the committee and the priorities into an agenda overview for the next 7 months. And I know that we are wanting to share this at a really high level with RPOC as well, so they kind of can see their workflow. But to what you're uplifting, Acting President Wong, I do think that if we decide to do subcommittees in certain functions, that would change agenda items and potentially allow for more discussion around some of these items that you all have already uplifted around needing more time and space at the actual RPOC meetings, if we could delegate some of these things out. So I know that we as staff have developed some ideas that we could share with you all about potential workflows that could maybe fit into a limited duration subcommittee for this year. And then we'll be eager to hear from you all if there's other things coming up for y'all.
Any other thoughts on subcommittees? Okay.
We have one more question, I think, for you on the next slide.
Colleagues.
This is a binary choice, not a Likert scale.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this reflects our council priorities. I know we've had a lot of robust conversation. And also the additional things that I know Councilor Wong and I worked on in terms of continuous improvement. I liked seeing the updates about the work that still needs to be scoped and whatnot, but I'm happy to see that that work landing, and hopefully we have the opportunity to bring folks along. So thanks.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. This is not a specific workflow, but I think it's something that at the council level that we need to be aware of and normalize talking about, which is that we're struggling right now because we have a lack of a regional system and we have partners who are not committed to moving their agency towards regionalism. And some of that is based on the difference of the politics of the three counties. And some of that is because of the threats that are coming, particularly from the federal government. Everybody's in a bunker down, head down kind of posture. But with the changes that are anticipated coming from the federal administration, we're not going to see it for this budget season, but we're going to see it for next. It's going to be severe, and it's going to hit not only our counties, but it's going to hit some of our individual providers. And we have amazing nonprofit communities out there doing good work. And we should figure out where in the workflow or where in council meetings we can have the emergency response or emergent need conversation, because there will be contracts canceled that don't neatly fit into any of these squares that will blast massive holes into the system, and the assumptions that we have that we are building on the foundation will no longer be there. So we can't plan for it, but I think it's something that is always going to be needed in terms of being able to prioritize that time for us as council to learn about, to ask questions about, and then if we can respond, to respond. I don't know what other folks are hearing, but there are a significant amount of dollars that do come into the region that do not go through the county, but are direct allocation to nonprofits, and they are all already in crisis, and they haven't even received the letters yet.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the agenda for me aligns with our priorities, so kudos for that. Thank you. I'm just wondering, kind of like the interconnectedness of RPOC with, the general public, and how do we communicate movement and progress to various stakeholders. And I think I heard discussion of having like a summit at some point, and yeah, just being really thoughtful about how we are able to communicate what's happening on our RPOC and the changes that might be on the horizon, both external and internal, and like having a place where we can give like a state of the system type conversation or presentation, because I think we just need to do some more level setting, and it's not just at RPOC, but I think with the general public, because I don't want to be in a place where we're just being like, things are different, things aren't working well because federal government did this. I think if we can speak more to like, what's the state of the system and like what are the actual like levers and things that we control as a region. I think that's going to be a more helpful conversation, both at a provider summit and with the public. So I don't really see that as a thing in the agenda right now, but I feel like the interconnectedness of RPOC and the work, and how do we connect to the broader community would be important. I don't have any ideas, but I feel like that's just a link that we need to think through, and maybe your brilliant staff have some ideas around that. Because if no one knows we're doing good work, then like we're losing kind of that impact sort of thing. So yeah, just my general thoughts.
I'll ask you to speak on the symposium in a second, but with regards to communications, we've just briefing Councilor Lewis, Councilor Simpson, and Councilor Nolan this morning, and we'll get to everybody else eventually. But our communications team is doubling down on orthodox methods. You've seen a lot of earned media recently. Emily Lee was on TV last night. You should check that out. But then we're also doubling down on unorthodox methods as well, directly working with community organizations to tell a different story. It's important that the work is really highlighted as well as Metro. Sometimes Metro doesn't need to be mentioned until the very end. And, we're really thinking those messages through about what is most important to be shared, because there are parts of the art park that we feel really proud of that are not going to resonate with people. A dashboard, yeah, well, is that what people really want to hear? That's just a tool with which people can communicate. So I just want to reassure you, we're thinking these things through, and we are going to be very ambitious and aggressive over the next year in our communications efforts.
And where are you with symposium planning?
Right there.
Yeah, I'll just note that to follow up with what Liam is saying, I do think that the communications out for the work that we are doing, the RPOC is doing, is multifaceted. And, there's a whole ecosystem of invested parties that are working with SHS. It's the people that pay the tax, service providers, participants. So like finding different ways to communicate our successes, challenges, and opportunities, but really how we are meeting these headwinds that we're facing and what solutions we're coming up with this local regional funding source that is flexible and can stop gaps for some of the things that we're experiencing. On the provider side, one of the things that we have been thinking about is a regional provider conference that would bring together providers from all across the region, something that has never happened here, to really provide that state of the system update, to lean into the conversation around regionalism and the power and the opportunity that we have, to really go there. Really uplifting what the work that you're doing, but also using that as a communications platform and doing some work sessions around where do we head from here, and some strategic mapping of the system and what we want to do to ensure that, we're not just using this local resource here in siloed ways, but that we're building a regional system that then we can share out with the rest of the country and talk about national standards that could be learned from based on the work that we're doing here locally.
It's really exciting. If I'm a provider now, where do I get my takes and information on the state of the system? Is it just vibes and whatever you hear from your partner? I don't know, is there who's crafting that narrative?
Yeah, I think for each of the providers, it's a lot of that's coming from their local contract managers and the work that they're doing with our county specifically, right? Because that's who they get their contracts with. We have here at Metro build out some additional opportunities around training and technical assistance, where we're bringing providers together and communicating out some of those challenges. And we have a work group for the administrative role, but as a region, we haven't really set that really strong foundation. We have some work happening that we could build upon, but we're really seeing that provider conference is really that opportunity to be able to share at a regional level where things are at.
Well, now I'm getting excited too, because just to reassure you, Councilor Wong, Multnomah County has been hosting a provider conference on a regular basis for at least a year now. But we're building up capacity inside of our housing department really intentionally. We're really fortunate to have an engagement expert, Hasiel Lopez, who's been leading the entire department on strategic engagement with community. And we also have Melissa Arnold, who's leading on the strategic engagements at a leadership level. So there's a lot of work going on right now under the hood at the housing department in terms of our outreach and engagement. It's just really important to me that we do it intentionally, and there is an outcome and a value to the people we're engaging with. It's not just for us, it's for the people we're engaging with too. So if it's rolling out a little slow, it's been due to capacity and some of my I don't micromanage a lot, but this is one where I really care about. I've had some difficult experiences in the past working for government. I don't want to repeat them.
That's right. Thank you. Great. Any more slides?
That's the last
That's
slide.
it? Okay.
Acting President Wong.
Great. Well, robust discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll chat with you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is a council discussion of approved fiscal year 26-27 budget and opportunity for public testimony. Today, Metro Council has time for additional discussion of the approved fiscal year 26-27 budget. Following discussion, we will also hold a public hearing on the approved budget. Last Thursday, April 30th, Metro Council, acting as the Budget Committee, adopted resolution number 26-5586 to approve the fiscal year 26-27 budget and transmit it to the TSCC, who provided receipt of acceptance. And we have COO Madrigal and Chief Financial Officer Brian Kennedy here again to answer questions councilors may have. Colleagues, any questions on the budget? Nothing?
Acting President Wong, I feel like we already showered the finance team with praise for another exceptional budget. If it's okay, I'd rather we don't do it again. I'm just kidding.
Fair enough. Can't think of anything. Okay. Excellent work.
Christine has a question.
Oh, Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, I don't really have thoughts on the budget itself, but more on the budget process. And I think we had a lot of conversations with Marisa so that our COO presented budget, not only had our fingerprints on it, but also was preparing us so that we had already made the hard decisions, if it were, to be put that way. So I want to just recognize that we're sitting here in a place of non-panic while many of our peers are in absolute free fall and panic. And it's only because we have an executive team that knows how to function and function with us. So I want to thank you. I want to thank those who are supporting you in this process. I think that is a skill that we do have at Metro, and I don't want to see that disappear, even as we might try different things in the future in terms of how council interacts or is organized. The other place, though, that in the process, I think this is technically our third hearing. I mean, we've had several of these opportunities for public testimony around budget. We have another one. Okay. This is our second. Okay. Just surprising. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Just surprising how little input we get during budget season compared to the letters we will receive 6 months from now saying, why aren't you funding this or that or funding it differently? And then those people don't come back in our budget season. So not to say there's anything wrong. We are posted. We are very public. But we're not connecting the dots for folks who are advocating mid-year that now is the moment to come and ask. So I don't know what we should do about that other than maybe link to the exact dates of these hearings next time people come asking us for longer term commitments than we can make through programmatic expenses. So with that, again, thank you for all of your work, and to Brian.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comment on like long-term planning and you know, being thoughtful. And I think since the staff do such a good job kind of year by year, like I wonder if there's any opportunity in the future for kind of deeper strategic planning, kind of as an agency, to look, out, 3 to 5 years. Because I think that's what I'm missing kind of in the financial budget is like, I have a good sense of this year now, and it might be like 18, 20 months out sort of thing, but like, it'd be nice just to have a bigger picture space about like, where do you want to be as a agency in 5 years, like when we grow up type thing. And I think being able to do that actually really reflects kind of like, you know, the skill and expertise of our staffs, because it's not an emergency, but I think we also have a place now where it's like we can think a little more big picture. And we've never really had that kind of conversation. Like I think we set some council priorities that are probably, you know, multi-year, but like it'd be nice just to see them all kind of in a facilitated budget conversation. So we're like in, you know, 4 or 5 fiscal years, this is where we hope and plan to be, and with our initiatives and things like that. But you know, that's also a lot of work.
President Wong, I really appreciate that. And I think that that's an exciting conversation. And I agree that we could have that conversation because we have a base of stability that, you know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, with the pandemic raging, you know, it's difficult to see beyond that time. We have a couple huge opportunities coming up that I think would line up really well with what you're saying. Every fall we have our long-term forecasts, and we can do deeper dives into different areas with that, you know, based on council interest, because the forecast and the planning for each area of Metro is a little bit different. I also think that, and Sabrina and I will be coming back to you with a recommendation on targeted universalism. But we feel really strongly that there's a huge opportunity between targeted universalism, the future vision, to really set some long-term, and I'm talking like 50-year strategic direction for Metro through that targeted universalism frame, and you know, wrap it into the update of the Sporetti. So I think I just want to really reflect that I appreciate your comments, and I think this is the right time for that, because we have some huge opportunities to step back and look at things, not just where do we want to be in 5 years, but 10 years, 15, 30, 50 as an organization. So would love to come back and noodle on that with you individually, and then also have, you know, some work sessions about some things that we could do to achieve that.
If I could add something, I completely agree. I want to give the council some credit that, you know, we talk about the budget as a policy document, and I think it shapes agency policy a lot, but also the budget should be a reflection of other policies that council has, policy decisions council has made. And so you see that in the affordable housing bond, or the parks and nature bond, the zoo bond, parks levy, SHS. All the budget in a lot of ways is the summation of those policies and should reflect council's priorities. And I think part of the reason we see less public involvement than some places is because people are involved in the development of the bond measures, in things like RWAC for WPES and solid waste. So we're gathering a lot of that input at various points in the process, and the budget reflects that, which is great. And that doesn't diminish the fact that I think you all hear from constituents and stakeholders with other interests and issues, and you know, it'd be great if they could channel that into the budget process as well. But I think it's also important to kind of take a moment and appreciate the ways in which Metro's public engagement provides people a lot of opportunities to influence those policy decisions that end up coming to you reflected in the budget.
I think the last thing that I'll say is that I do think, even though it's budget adjacent, the adoption of the solid waste fees, I think it's possible that you know, testimony comes forward, whether written to you, or I think that, you know, it seems to be the one area where we're getting some feedback, and there's some different choices that council could make. So I would just flag that.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing on the fiscal year 26-27 approved budget. Seeing no further discussion, I will open a public hearing on the approved fiscal year 26-27 budget. Georgia, will you please read the procedures for public testimony?
If you are testifying on the fiscal year 26-27 approved budget, now is the time to do so. If you are testifying in person, please sign up by filling out a blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you are testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly before you rejoin as a panelist, and you can turn on your camera if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. The timer begins when you begin speaking. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. Not seeing anyone in person here to testify. Give it a moment for folks on Zoom. I am not seeing anyone there either.
Okay, well, seeing no testimony, I'll close the public hearing. Metro Council will next consider the budget on May 14th. Public testimony will be accepted during that meeting. All right, we'll move on to COO Communication.
Thank you. Just to note that we have 2 town halls this week, one tomorrow for employees, one tomorrow afternoon, and then one Thursday morning, both virtual. So invite folks to tune in, and thank you, Acting President Wong, for joining us for that. And I think we have other counselors as well who will be
looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to Councilor Communications. We'll start with Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. Colleagues, I am going to ask us to all take some time. I want to recognize the passing of Davis Yellow Wash Washings out of respect for his family and the community. From here on out in my remarks, I will refer to him as our elder. If any of you would like to share any remarks, I would invite you to immediately follow me and to also refer to him as our elder. That's tribal practice. Our elder had a significant and long career in public service. And during his life, he had many roles, including acting as the chief of police for the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakama Nation. He also served his tribal community on the tribal council. And many of us who knew him regarded him for having such a strong moral compass that you could feel it in your bones, even through Zoom. He had a sense of justice, and these strengths he carried with him as a statesman and a representative of his tribe, Indian country, and Indian people. Our elder also often lent his voice to speak for the land, plant, and animal relatives. He was an essential voice for the environmental stewardship and multiple times directly informed and positively affected our work, most significantly at Willamette Cove and at Willamette Falls. If you were able to make it down to any of the Lamprey festivals, you were sure to have met him. He was a dear, dear, dear friend of people from across so many tribes. The outpouring over the past 4 days from other tribes, the Warm Springs, who are dealing with their own complicated losses, the Silettes. Our elder had over 600 people join for recognition of his passing in just a few days, and there were so many more who couldn't be there. He served on the board of the Willamette Falls Trust, where I got to know him and work with him deeply. And I don't have a lot of words formed, but the strength and power that he brought as a leader of leaders, coming from the Yakama Nation and working across so many boundaries and with so many challenges, really respect the way he showed up and the way that he always centered on doing the right thing and making sure that tribal voices were heard. Willamette Cove, Superfund, all of the work. Our elder put in so many hours, but he was also very dedicated to his family. And my prayers have been with him, and our agency was able to send a card. And I know that the tribe is appreciative of that work and partnership. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Roseworth. Colleagues, anything else? Okay, well, thanks for sharing that, Councilor Lewis. All right, well, with no further discussion, the council meeting is adjourned. Our next regular meeting is